Volek Tar had overseen the absorption of 12 civilizations. He did not remember all of their names. That was not arrogance. It was simply the consequence of repetition. First contact always followed the same shape. Always. There was the arrival. Overwhelming, precise, impossible to ignore. The sky would change. The stars would rearrange themselves into something deliberate. Something watching. Then came the fear. It rose from young species in predictable ways. Their signals would spike across every available frequency, fragmented, overlapping, desperate. Some would threaten. Some would plead. Most would do both at once. It did not matter. Volek had watched it happen 12 times. He knew the exact moment when a civilization understood. Not intellectually, not in words, but in the deeper, older way. The way a body understands when it stands too close to the edge of something vast. That moment always came. And after it came, everything else was just procedure. He stood now at the observation aperture of the Conclave flagship Inevitable Accord and watched the planet below rotate slowly in the dark.
Blue, white, brown.
Unremarkable. A standard terrestrial world orbiting a mid-spectrum star at the outer edge of a minor spiral arm. The Conclave had catalogued thousands like it. Most were empty. A few held life. Fewer still produced intelligence. Even fewer survived it. Volek had read the file on this species twice. Not because it impressed him. Because it did not. They called themselves humans. Their history was inefficient, fragmented, violent in ways that lacked structure. They had not fought the clean, contained conflicts of mature civilizations. No controlled expansions. No limited strategic engagements. Instead, they had engaged in prolonged, grinding self-destruction. Wars that consumed entire regions. Weapons deployed without long-term planning. Environmental collapse triggered by short-term gain. By all established models, they should not have persisted. And yet, they had. That detail sat in his mind with a faint, persistent weight. Not concern. Not curiosity. Just resistance. Like a number in a calculation that did not quite resolve. Behind him, the command chamber moved with quiet precision. 12 species stood at their stations. Each one a representative of a civilization that had once looked up at a sky like Earth's and realized, too late, that they were not alone. Each one now part of the conclave. Integrated. Aligned. Absorbed. Volek turned slightly as his adjutant approached.
Sarah Lynn.
Efficient. Controlled. Exact in both movement and speech. She had served under him for 83 years. Status, he said. The human delegation has confirmed departure, she replied. Estimated arrival, 3 hours. How many? 7. Volek paused. Not visibly. Not enough for most to notice. But Sarah had worked with him long enough to register it. Their full diplomatic body, he asked. Yes. Volek looked back at the planet.
7.
The conclave had arrived with 41 vessels. Not warships, not overtly, but ships that carried enough mass, enough presence, to communicate scale without needing to demonstrate it. It was part of the design. First contact was not only communication. It was positioning. You are certain? He asked. Yes. A fractional pause. There is an additional detail. Volek waited. They're transmitting audio on the approach channel. He turned his head slightly. Audio. Yes. For what purpose? Sarah hesitated, not out of uncertainty, but because the information itself resisted categorization. It appears to be music. Volek returned his attention to the planet below.
Of course it was.
Young species often reached for culture in moments of uncertainty. Symbols.
Sounds.
Fragments of identity projected outward in the hope that something listening would understand. It changed nothing. The docking sequence initiated at precisely 0900 ship time. Volek stood at the head of the receiving chamber. The space had been designed across centuries to serve a single purpose.
Scale.
The ceiling rose 30 meters overhead. The floor, polished to reflective perfection, doubled every figure present. Lighting arrays positioned behind the conclave delegation ensured that those who entered from the docking corridor would step out of shadow into illumination. Into clarity. into understanding. 41 representatives stood behind him in ordered formation. Each one selected. Each one placed. Each one a part of the same message. You are small. We are not. It had always worked, without exception. The docking aperture opened. 7 figures emerged. Volek watched them closely. This was the moment. The moment where everything began to follow its established path. He knew what to expect. He had seen it 12 times. The hesitation. The subtle tightening of posture. The slight upward tilt of the head as they took in the scale of the chamber. The micro-delays in movement as instinct struggled to reconcile what it was seeing. It was always there. Always. The humans walked forward.
Slowly.
Not carefully. Not cautiously. Just slowly. As though time itself had no urgency attached to it. Volek narrowed his focus. That was not the expected pattern. He adjusted his observation. Looked for the secondary signals. Muscle tension. Eye movement. Breathing irregularities. He found none. The man at the front stepped into the light. The file identified him immediately. Director Elias Merrick, lead negotiator. Age: 61. Former military strategist. The image in the file had been accurate, but incomplete. Photographs often were. They captured structure, not presence. Marek's face carried the marks of time and decision. Not damage, not softness. Something else. Something settled. He looked around the chamber. At the ceiling. At the assembled delegation. At the deliberate architecture of authority. His expression did not change. Not even slightly. Volek felt something shift.
Small.
Undefined. But real. Merrick stepped forward across the polished floor. Closed the distance. Stopped at the precise point indicated in the protocol. And then, he smiled. It was not the smile Volek had catalogued. Not submission. Not diplomacy. Not performance. It was recognition. Merrick extended his hand. I believe this is the part where we greet each other, he said. His voice was steady, unforced, as though this moment, this room, this scale, were entirely within expectation. Volek took the offered hand. The gesture had been explained in the briefing. A primitive custom, an indication of non-aggression. The grip was firm, brief, ordinary. I am Volek Tar, he said, representative of the conclave. Merrick, the human replied. Earth. A pause. Then, do you have tea? Behind Volek, 41 representatives of 12 civilizations remained perfectly still. For the first time in 4 centuries, Volek Tar did not immediately recognize the shape of what was happening. And that, more than anything, was new. The first formal session began at midday. 3 hours after arrival. 3 hours in which nothing unusual happened. And that, Volek realized, was the first anomaly. Most species used that time poorly. They isolated themselves. They argued internally. They attempted last-minute strategy adjustments driven by fear rather than preparation. It showed when they entered the chamber. Always. Volek had learned to read it instantly. The humans did not isolate. They did not argue. They did not request additional data. They did not ask for clarification. They did not even explore the ship. They were still. When they entered the negotiation chamber, they moved with the same unhurried precision they had shown in the docking bay. Not cautious, not defensive, just certain. Merrick took the central seat. To his right sat a woman in a dark uniform, Admiral Rhea Solis, according to the file. Observer. Though the way she held herself suggested the word meant something different than usual. Her posture was relaxed. Her hands rested flat on the table. Her eyes moved, slowly, deliberately, across the conclave delegation. Not assessing threat. Not measuring power.
Cataloging.
To Marek's left, 2 legal advisors arranged documents with quiet efficiency. Paper documents. Actual paper. Volek watched the motion carefully. It was not symbolic. It was habitual. The final member of the human delegation took a seat slightly behind the others. No introduction had been provided for him. No designation listed. He said nothing. He did not move unnecessarily. He simply observed. Volek began the session. The conclave extends formal recognition to the governing body of Earth, he said. This meeting constitutes the opening of integration negotiations under standard protocol. Merrick nodded once. Understood. No tension. No hesitation. Just acknowledgement. Volek continued. He outlined the structure, the expectations, the benefits, the obligations. He had delivered this presentation 12 times. Each time refined, each time precise, each time calibrated to produce understanding. The humans listened. That was all. They did not interrupt. They did not exchange glances. They did not react at key pressure points. That was wrong. There were sections designed to land. Carefully constructed moments where the scale of the conclave became unavoidable, where the reality of integration, of surrendering unilateral autonomy, became clear. Every species reacted. Every time. Even the most disciplined. The humans did not. Merrick wrote in a small notebook. Ink pen. Slow, consistent strokes. Occasionally he would pause. Not in confusion. Not in concern. Just pause. Then continue. At one point, during a section outlining territorial jurisdiction across 47 systems, Volek observed Merrick draw something in the corner of the page. A shape. Rough. Winged. A bird. Volek did not understand why that detail stayed with him, but it did. 2 hours later, the presentation concluded. Volek folded his hands. Waited. This was the moment. The shift. The realization. Silence filled the chamber. 41 conclave representatives remained perfectly still. 7 humans sat quietly across from them. Merrick closed his notebook. Clicked his pen once. "Thank you," he said. That was thorough. He opened the notebook again. Turned to a page already filled with writing. Dense. Ordered. Prepared. We have some points to discuss. Volek felt something adjust internally. Not alarm. Not yet. But the structure he had relied on, expected, was not forming. They began. The humans negotiated with precision. That in itself was not unusual. Some species adapted quickly. What was unusual was how clean it was. They conceded minor points immediately, without hesitation, without discussion. Protocol formatting, communication channels, administrative alignment. But when they reached something that mattered, they stopped. That clause does not work for us, Merrick said at one point. No emphasis. No challenge. No emotional framing. He slid a sheet of paper across the table. Here is an alternative. Volek read it. It was correct. Legally sound. Structurally efficient. And positioned in a way that suggested not reaction, but preparation. He looked up. Merrick was waiting. Not pushing. Not pressing. Just waiting. Volek adjusted the clause. The session continued. By the end of the first day, Volek had identified 2 distinct impressions. The first was professional. The humans were competent. More than competent. Prepared in a way that suggested long-term planning. The second was not professional. It began with the objects, the notebook, the pen, the paper, and the thermos. It sat on the table beside Marek's right hand. Dented slightly at the base. Metal. Unremarkable. At some point during the session, Merrick opened it. Poured liquid into a small cup. Steam rose briefly. Then vanished. Tea. Volek watched the motion carefully. It was unceremonious. No performance. No signal. No intention beyond the act itself. The thermos remained there for the rest of the session. Between them, between conclave instruments capable of quantum-level encryption and a container of heated liquid, Volek found himself looking at it more than once. He did not know why. The second detail was Admiral Solis. On her wrist, a small device pulsed occasionally. Subtle. Controlled. Each time it did, she glanced at it. Briefly. Less than a second. No reaction followed. No communication. No shift in posture. Just acknowledgement. Volek noted the timing. Irregular, but not random. The third detail was the man without a title. He had not spoken once. Not a word. But his attention never drifted. He watched the conclave delegation the way one watches weather, not expecting change, but prepared for it. After the session, Volek returned to his quarters. Alone, the corridors of the inevitable accord were silent.
Wide. Ordered.
He passed 2 junior representatives. They acknowledged him with quiet confidence. They had no doubts. Why would they? This was procedure. This was structure. This was known. Volek entered his quarters, activated the system interface. Display outer system skin data, he said. The data appeared.
Clean.
Organized. Then, not clean. 7 anomalies. Positioned beyond the outer planetary belt. At the edge of the system. Volek leaned forward slightly. The readings were inconsistent. Each scan returned a different mass estimate. Each attempt to refine the data resulted in increased uncertainty. The system had assigned a confidence rating. 4%. Meaning, the system did not trust what it was seeing. Volek studied the shapes. They were not diffuse. Not random. They were bounded.
Defined.
That was wrong. Interference artifacts did not behave that way. He ran the scan again. Same result. He ran it a 3rd time. Different numbers. Same problem. Volek sat back. There were explanations. There were always explanations. Sensor interference. Radiation distortion. Data echo from gravitational anomalies. He selected the most reasonable classification. Background interference. Filed it. Closed the display. The room returned to stillness. Outside the viewport, Earth rotated slowly. Half in light, half in shadow. The dividing line between the two. Sharp. Unmoving. Volek stood there longer than necessary. Not thinking. Not analyzing. Just watching. After a moment he spoke. Quietly. It always follows the same pattern. He said it once. Then again. It always follows the same pattern. The words settled into the room. Familiar. Reliable. They did not feel as stable as they usually did. Volek turned away from the viewport. Dimmed the lights. Prepared for rest. As he lay in the dark, one detail returned. Uninvited. The smile. Small.
Real.
Not submission. Not diplomacy. Recognition. Volek closed his eyes. He had overseen 12 first contacts. Not one had begun like this. Day 2 began without incident, which by this point Volek understood was itself an incident. He arrived at the negotiation chamber early. He always did. It was part of the structure, part of the message. The host was present first.
Composed.
Settled.
Certain.
The room, when entered, should already feel decided. Volek sat at the head of the table. Sarah Lynn took her place at his right. The rest of the conclave delegation arranged themselves behind in perfect alignment. Stillness. Order. Expectation. The door opened. The humans entered. 4 minutes after the scheduled time. Not late. Not early. Exactly within the agreed margin. But there was something in the way they entered. Not like visitors. Like participants. Like owners. Volek felt that thought form. He did not like it. Merrick crossed the room and took his seat. Set the thermos down. Opened the notebook.
Clicked the pen. Good morning, he said.
It was not a greeting. It was a statement. They began. The second day focused on territorial boundaries. Specifically, the solar system. For most species, this was where resistance appeared. Not strategic. Not calculated. Instinctive. Home mattered, even to those who claimed it did not. The idea of drawing lines through it, dividing it, produced something close to grief. Volek had seen it 12 times. Merrick approached it like a surveyor. Precise. Measured. Detached. We would like clarification on the outer boundary designation, he said. Volek provided it. Standard definition. Merrick nodded. Made a note. Then, given the operational range of the defensive fleet, that boundary may require adjustment. Volek registered the phrase. Defensive fleet. He filed it. Continued. They moved through the clause. Efficiently. Merrick referenced a precedent from 2 centuries prior.
Correctly.
Accurately. Volek's legal delegate confirmed it. The boundary shifted. Merrick wrote something in the notebook. They moved on. No tension. No resistance. No grief. That was wrong. By midday, they had progressed further than expected. Too far. Too clean. Volek adjusted his internal model. The humans were not reactive. They were prepared. The distinction mattered. The phrase appeared again. Later, during a discussion of resource allocation. Within the patrol range of the defensive fleet, we would expect. Again. Defensive fleet. Volek did not interrupt. He allowed it to pass. But he noted it. Twice now. Same tone. No emphasis. No explanation. That was not how young civilizations referenced military assets. They either minimized them or overemphasized them. Never normalized. The session ended at 1700. The humans gathered their materials. Merrick closed the thermos, slid it into his coat. At the door, Admiral Solis paused. She looked back. Not at the delegation. Not at Volek. At the room itself. Her expression. Unreadable. Then she left. Volek remained seated after they were gone. The room felt unresolved. He did not like unresolved things. Sarah, he said. She stepped forward immediately. Full intelligence review on human military capability. She nodded. Left. Volek sat alone. The word returned. Defensive fleet. He said it once. Quietly. It did not fit. That night, Sarah returned with a report. It was extensive. 30 years of observation. Intercepted communications. Energy readings. Industrial output. Comprehensive. Volek read the summary. Earth maintained a unified defense structure. Surface-to-orbit weapons. Orbital stations. Patrol vessels. Several hundred. Functional. Efficient. Limited. Volek studied the specifications. They were expected. Nothing exceeded projected capability. Nothing suggested anything beyond. He closed the file. The tension eased. Slightly. Consistent, he said. Yes, Sarah replied. A pause. Then, mostly. Volek looked at her. She held the data screen carefully. The propulsion signatures, she said. What about them? They match the patrol vessels. Yes. Another pause. They also match something else. Volek waited. If scaled. He did not move. Scaled how? Sarah glanced at the screen, then back at him. Approximately 800 times. Silence. Volek processed the number. He did not want to. If, she continued carefully, such scaling were irrelevant. It is not, Volek said. Sarah nodded immediately. Of course. Silence settled between them. Then, what are you suggesting? He asked. I am not suggesting, she said. I am noting. She turned the screen slightly. Outer system anomalies. Volek's gaze shifted. The 7 readings. Bounded. Stable. Interference artifacts, he said. Yes. Another pause. They share the same energy profile, she added. Silence. Longer this time. Volek stood. Walked to the viewport. Earth below. Unchanged. Ordinary. Correlation does not imply causation, he said. No, Sarah agreed. Silence again. Then, scale factor, Volek said. 800. He did the calculation. He did not want to. He got the answer anyway. He did not speak it. They are interference artifacts, he said again. Yes, Sarah said. She left. Volek remained. The room felt smaller. Day 3. The pattern continued, which meant there was no pattern. The humans arrived. On time. Merrick. Thermos. Notebook. Admiral Solis. Wrist device. Pulse. Glance. No reaction. The negotiations progressed. Legal frameworks. Jurisdiction boundaries. The humans pushed. Precisely. 3 clauses challenged. 2 overturned. 1 conceded. Clean. 2 clean. Then, mid-session, Merrick spoke again. Regarding outer system assets, he said, within the operational range of the defensive fleet. Third time. Volek set his pen down. He did not interrupt, but something inside him shifted. The session ended. Volek returned to his quarters. He did not sit. He activated the scan. Again. 7 anomalies. Same positions. Same problem. He adjusted the filters. Expanded resolution. The system attempted recalculation.
Failed.
Adjusted again. Failed again. Confidence rating. 3%. Lower. That should not happen. More data should increase certainty, not reduce it. Volek leaned closer. The shapes were consistent. That was the problem. Interference was not consistent. He isolated one anomaly. Ran structural mapping. The system hesitated. Then returned. Partial geometry. Angular. Deliberate. Constructed. Volek shut the system down. Immediately. The room returned to silence. They are interference artifacts, he said. The words felt different, less solid. That night, he did not sleep immediately. He lay in the dark. The phrase returned. Again. Again. Defensive fleet. 4 mentions. 3 days. No explanation. No emphasis. That was not fear. That was not bluff. That was assumption. Volek opened his eyes, stared into the dark, and, for the first time, the thought formed fully.
Clear.
Unavoidable. What if we are not the largest thing in this system? He did not answer it. He did not allow it to settle. Instead, he closed his eyes again and repeated, "It always follows the same pattern." This time, it sounded like a question. Day 4 began quietly. Too quietly. Volek noticed at the moment he woke. Not in the ship. The inevitable accord was unchanged. System stable. Atmosphere precise. Structure intact. The quiet was internal. The kind that forms when a thought has been circling for too long and is about to land.
He dressed.
Moved through the corridors. Ate without tasting. Sarah joined him halfway through the meal. She said nothing. That was how she communicated uncertainty. Volek set his utensils down. The anomalies, he said. She nodded. I ran structural analysis again. He waited. They are not interference. Silence. What are they? Sarah held his gaze. They are objects. Another pause. Positioned, she added, at fixed intervals. Volek felt the thought return. Stronger now. Pattern. Yes. Configuration? Sarah turned her screen. 7 points.
Evenly spaced.
Encircling the system.
Not randomly placed.
Not drifting. Holding position. A perimeter. Volek stood. How long? We don't know. Estimate. Sarah hesitated. At least as long as we've been observing the system. 30 years. Minimum. Volek exhaled slowly. Do not actively scan them. Yes.
She paused.
Volek, if they are what they appear to be. They are not, he said.
She stopped.
Nodded. They are not. Silence. Volek adjusted his jacket. I will proceed with negotiations. Because that was what you did. When you did not understand something, you continued doing what you did understand. The humans arrived. Merrick. Thermos. Notebook. Admiral Solis. Wrist device.
Pulse. Glance.
No reaction. They sat. The session began. 40 minutes in, Merrick spoke. As previously mentioned, within the operational range of the defensive fleet. Volek raised his hand. For the first time, he interrupted. Silence fell immediately. Merrick stopped, looked at him, waited. You have referenced this defensive fleet repeatedly, Volek said. No anger. No accusation. Just
clarity.
Our intelligence indicates your military assets consist of patrol-class vessels, he continued. Limited to intersystem capability. A pause. That does not require special classification.
Silence.
3 seconds. Longer than it should have been. Merrick looked at him. Then, very calmly, the defensive fleet, he said, is not the patrol vessels. He returned to his notebook. Shall we continue? Volek did not respond. Because something, finally,
connected.
The wrist devices activated. All at once. Across the conclave fleet. Not an alert. Something else. Every system. Responding simultaneously. Volek's panel lit. Data flooded in. Unfiltered. Uncategorized. Contact, Sarah said quietly. At the edge of the system, something had arrived. The sensors struggled, tried to measure,
Failed.
adjusted, failed again. Mass estimate. Inconclusive. Confidence rating. 12%. Volek stared at the data. The numbers were wrong. Not inaccurate. Impossible. Source, he asked. Outer perimeter, Sarah replied. The 7 anomalies. One of them had moved.
No.
Not moved. Activated. A distortion ripple spread outward. Space itself. Shifting. Fold signature. Something had exited. Volek had cataloged fold signatures for 4 centuries. He knew their scale. Destroyers, carriers, even the largest vessels, produced measurable patterns.
Defined. Contained.
This was neither. The instruments attempted classification. They failed. Repeatedly. Then, a number came through. Sarah read it.
Did not immediately speak.
Say it, Volek said. Mass estimate, she began. A pause. 4.2 billion metric tons. Silence. The confidence rating was still
Low.
which meant that was the minimum. Volek read the number again. Then again. Across the table, Merrick was watching him.
Calm. Still.
Admiral Solis allowed herself the smallest smile. It lasted less than a second. Then,
Gone.
the communications channel activated. Incoming transmission, an officer said. Source? The object. Content. The officer hesitated. Then read. U.S. Aegis Unbound. Earth Defense Fleet. Arriving on schedule. On schedule. Volek felt the words settle. Heavy. Final. Merrick lifted the thermos.
Poured tea.
Steam rose. Faded. He set the cup down. Looked at Volek. Shall we continue? They did. Because Volek said yes. And once he said it, there was no other option. The negotiation resumed. Words were spoken. Clauses discussed. Documents adjusted. But none of it mattered. Because outside, something was approaching. It took 6 hours to enter visual range. 6 hours. Of numbers increasing. Estimates revising. Confidence rising.
Slightly.
Not enough. At the 5th hour, Volek stood at the observation deck. Sarah beside him. He saw it. First, as distortion. Then, as shape. Then, as something too large to fit into either category. It did not resemble a warship. That was the first impossibility. All warships, regardless of species, converged on similar forms. Length, armor, weapon alignment. This did not. It looked like a city that had chosen to move. Sections layered upon sections. Structures embedded within structures. Entire segments, the size of conclave vessels, integrated into something larger. Volek tried to find its edge.
Failed.
Every time he thought he had it, the scale expanded. Again. Again. Sarah spoke quietly. The comparison,
She stopped.
then finished, is not favorable. Volek did not respond. Because the word did not apply. The object slowed. Then,
Stopped.
30,000 kilometers from Earth. 20,000 from the conclave fleet. Perfect position. Deliberate. Volek's tactical display updated. Point defense arrays active. An officer reported. A pause. Tracking us. Another pause. No lock. Silence. They are observing. Volek understood. They were being watched. The way one watches something. That is not a threat. He returned to the chamber. Merrick was seated. Exactly as before. Notebook open. Pen ready. Thermos beside him. Unchanged. Volek sat. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, the vessel, he said. Merrick looked up. Tell me about it. Silence. Then, Merrick closed the notebook. Set the pen aside. The Aegis Unbound, he said, was commissioned 18 years ago. Volek felt something shift. Again. First of her class. A pause. There are 4 currently in service. Volek sat very still. 18 years. The Conclave had detected humanity. 19 years ago, they had known. Before first contact, before protocol, before arrival, they had already begun. You built this, Valek said slowly. In response to us. Merrick shook his head slightly.
No, he said.
A pause. We built it, he added. In preparation. Silence filled the room. And for the first time, Valek understood. This had never been first contact. It had been an introduction. The room did not change. The table remained. The chairs. The light. The ordered geometry of the conclave delegation. Everything was exactly as it had been. And yet, nothing was the same. Valek sat across from Merrick and understood something with a clarity that felt almost physical. For 4 days, only one side had known what was actually happening.
Now,
both did. Merrick rested his hands on the table. Empty. No pen. No notebook. Just presence. I want to make something clear, he said. His voice was unchanged.
Low. Steady.
The Aegis Unbound is here because we asked her to be. Valek listened. She is not here as a threat. Silence. Valek considered the statement. A vessel of that scale, within 20,000 kilometers, tracking his fleet, not a threat. He thought about arguing, about pointing out the obvious, about defining threat in measurable terms.
Mass.
Firepower.
Proximity.
He did not, because he understood what Merrick meant. The threat had never been the ship. The threat was the choice behind it. I understand, Valek said. Merrick nodded once, picked up his pen. Open the notebook. Then let's continue, he said.
They did.
But the negotiation was no longer the same. Valek had arrived with a document. Standard Conclave Integration Protocol. Refined over 4 centuries. Tested across 12 civilizations. It was thorough, logical, fair. Within its own framework, it offered protection, resources, knowledge, in exchange for integration, alignment, surrender of independent military authority. It had always been accepted. Always. Merrick listened to it, as one listens to something already understood. Then, he set it aside. We're not here to join, he said. Valek did not react. Externally, Merrick continued. We're here to propose a partnership. The words settled into the room. Different. Not within. Not beneath. Beside. Merrick spoke without emphasis. Without performance. But every word landed. Equal standing. Mutual defense. Full sovereignty retained on both sides. Valek listened. Fully. Because for the first time in 4 centuries, he did not already know how this would end. No absorption, Merrick said. No integration into an existing structure. A pause. Something new. Valek sat back slightly. Not retreat. Adjustment. He thought about the 12 civilizations before this one. The pattern. The certainty. The inevitability. It had never been questioned, because it had never needed to be. Until now. The Conclave Council will need to review this, Valek said. Of course, Merrick replied. We expected that. A pause. Then, we have time. He lifted the thermos.
Poured tea.
Steam rose. Faded. We've had time. The rest of the session unfolded differently. Not as a demonstration of power, but as an exchange between equals. Valek found himself engaged. Not controlling. Not directing. Thinking. Merrick was precise. Flexible. He knew exactly which points mattered, and which did not. He gave ground where it cost nothing, held firm where it did. Valek recognized the technique. He had used it himself. For centuries. Now, it was being used on him. Admiral Solis spoke only once. 3 words. Quiet. Merrick nodded. Made a note. That was enough. By midday, the structure was clear. Not finalized. Not complete. But
real.
The signing took place that afternoon. The Conclave prepared its system. Quantum-encoded crystal. Biometric verification. 17-point archival redundancy.
Perfect. Permanent.
Merrick looked at it, then reached into his jacket. and placed a sheet of paper on the table.
Plain.
Text printed in clean lines.
Our copy, he said.
His legal advisor placed a second beside it. Conclave copy. Volok looked at the two sheets, then at the crystal system. 4 centuries of advancement, and a piece of pressed fiber.
He reached for the pen.
It was simple, balanced, ordinary.
He signed.
Then again. Merrick signed beside him.
Quick. Precise.
Sarah witnessed. Admiral Solis witnessed. The man without a title
Witnessed.
The agreement was done. Later, Volok stood at the observation window. The Aegis unbound remained. Still, massive, unmoved. Its lights stretched across its structure. Too many to count. Too large to comprehend at once. It did not feel like a weapon. It felt like a decision. Footsteps behind him. He did not turn. Merrick stopped beside him. They stood in silence. How long? Volok asked. 11 days, Merrick replied. Volok nodded slowly. So you sent it, he said, before the negotiations began. Yes. A pause. You were always going to have it here. Yes. Silence. We wanted you to see it, Merrick added.
Volok considered that.
Not as a threat. Not as leverage. As information. This is what we are. The same as the thermos, the notebook, the music. No performance. No deception. Just
truth.
It's impressive, Volok said. It was insufficient, but accurate. Merrick watched the ship. For a moment. She's home, he said. Then, good evening. And he left. The human shuttle departed at 1900.
Small.
Unremarkable. 7 individuals returning to their world. The Aegis unbound waited until the shuttle cleared the perimeter. Then,
it moved.
Not fast. Not dramatic. Just
certain.
It turned.
Slowly. And departed.
Volok watched it until it was gone. The space it left behind looked exactly the same. It did not feel the same. In his quarters, Volok opened his log. 4 centuries of records. 12 civilizations. Each one following the same structure. Species.
Date. Terms. Outcome.
He began typing. Human. Date recorded. Agreement logged. Then, he reached the final section. Assessment.
He stopped.
This section had always been the longest. Detailed. Comprehensive. This time, he wrote 3 lines. Threat classification. Inapplicable. Recommendation. Archive all prior intelligence under incorrect assumptions. Conclusion. This species was not surviving. It was preparing. He read the words. Considered adding more. He did not. 3 lines were enough. He closed the log. Outside, Earth turned.
Blue. White. Brown.
Unremarkable. He watched it. For a long time. He thought about the file. The wars. The chaos. He had seen failure. He had been wrong. It was not failure. It was
practice.
10,000 years of becoming something that no one should have had to become. And when something larger appeared, they had not panicked. They had not begged. They had not hoped. They had decided. One conversation. One time. On their terms. In the morning, the conclave fleet departed. 41 ships. Formation intact. Structure preserved. Volok stood at the window. Watched Earth become smaller. Then distant. Then just another point of light. For the first time in 4 centuries. He did not know what came next. He expected that to feel like loss. It did not. It felt like the beginning of something that did not yet have a name. Outside, the stars remained unchanged.
Cold.
Distant. And somewhere, beyond them, something new had already begun.